Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the fourth installment of our Legends of Pest and Vector Control webinar. Today, we're featuring Dr. Bernard Lewis. Before we get started, I have a few webinar procedures to go over. First, everyone, please mute your line. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat box and we'll be answering all questions at the end of the webinar. If you have any additional questions at the end and they're not answered, you can email them to education@nola.gov. And this webinar will be posted on our YouTube channel. Now I will turn it over to Dr. Claudia Rigo, Director of New Orleans Mosquito, Termite, and Rodent Control Board, who will be introducing today's speaker.
Thank you so much, Astacia. Thank you, everybody, for being on the line today. And it is my pleasure today we're going to have a conversation with Dr. Bernard Lewis. And, he's been around in the industry for a very long time. And again, I think with all of these speakers that we've interviewed, just a really interesting story. And, the whole goal here is to get to know you a little bit more. Okay. I mean, everyone reads your papers and we know what kind of work you did. But, who's the man behind all that work? So thank you so much for coming into New Orleans. I appreciate it. And, we're going to get started. And for the folks that are on the line, you've won many awards throughout your career. And I think, one of the big ones is you've been introduced in the Pest Management Professional Hall of Fame. Yes. And that was in 2016. So it's quite an elite group of folks that are in there. So again, thank you so much for coming in. Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go to the next slide and a little bit of what we're going to talk about today. And I think we're going to start pretty early in your life, right? All the folks that were, pretty influential and all the way through the end of your career. And you're emeritus, but
yes, I'm still going.
I think most everyone
got that
keeps
battery
working.
In me.
Yep, I think that's what happens. It's part of your nature, right? I think that is it. To be honest, I don't even see myself retiring. It might be where you retire from the city, but there's so much to be done out in the world.
Request for me after I'm dead.
That's right. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started here, and let's talk a little bit about your mom and dad.
Okay, so I should start off with the fact that I'm adopted. I was adopted.
Okay.
So mom and dad, when I met mom and dad, the folks who raised me, I was 1 year old in Minneapolis. So my mother was told, my adoptive mother was told she couldn't have any kids. She wanted kids. And I was born in 51, but after World War II, there were a lot of mixed babies in Minneapolis. I'm mixed. My biological mother was white, my father was black. And that in World War II. And mom adopted me, and she kept going. She adopted 7.
Wow.
And then a miracle happened. She got pregnant, had 3 more.
Sometimes that happens, right? I know a lot of stories of
Welcome
that.
To life.
So you had a huge family, and I think there's some photographs here.
Yes.
Beautiful photos of mom and dad.
That 1950s television set. It wasn't even black and white. It was a green screen, I think.
Yep. So, and I think you were a 1 year old there in cold Minneapolis, I believe, right? Great. So, and then I think we've got some other photographs too.
Right. So it was my mother was the one she fell in love with. She told me my eye color, and then of course Dad came along. He was a World War II vet. The other photos in there are my grandparents, Willie Lee Garner and Ethel Garner. I spent 6 years with grandparents in Fresno. I got farmed out at an early age. I'm not sure why. Maybe I was a high energy kid. Who knows? And then the lower 3 individuals, that's my mom on my right, and the left is my aunt Ethel, and in the middle is my grandmother Leah Coleman, who was in Los Angeles.
Oh, in Los Angeles. So that's really the California.
So I spent my winters in Minneapolis and summers in Fresno.
Wait a second. What?
I know why I live in the Bay Area.
Okay. It should be the opposite way, right?
That other gentleman is my Uncle Babe. And he wasn't a blood uncle, but you know how you get these extended family members. And he was an incredible man. He was big into civil rights. He went to Black Panther Party meetings, Communist Party meetings, whatever. He was the intellectual part in the family that kind of pushed me to read.
Oh, that's great.
And explore.
So as a young kid, you liked to read?
Yeah, I read a lot.
Yeah.
I did that. I much prefer to be out in nature. I think there's some slides.
Yeah, I think we're coming up with that. And
Yeah.
so as a young kid, how old were you here?
It's probably in kindergarten. So people ask me, when did I first start
Yeah.
playing with bugs? I can tell you when. I was 5 years old in kindergarten in Our Lady of Mount Carmel Catholic school.
Yeah.
I was raised Catholic. I was baptized twice Catholic. That's another story. But during didn't work the first time. So during recess, do you remember recess?
I do remember. We used to have pretty nice long recesses, right?
Right. So
in
I
school,
would.
I think every day, morning and afternoon.
I would chase bugs. I remember chasing grasshoppers and things like that.
Oh, that's great. That is great. As a kid, I used to jump. I lived in the suburbia, so I used to in Illinois, a suburb of Illinois, Chicago, and so I used to jump window wells because everyone's got basements to collect all the toads, and so I'd have buckets of just toads, and then I'd go release them out into the creek, right? That was close by. So that's cool. That's
I
great.
think that next image shows valley grasshoppers. I was the deal for a kid. Well, what do you mean catching? I try to sneak up on them and catch them with my fingers, and then I catch them with my fingers and put them in a harvester ant nest.
I think as a budding entomologist, I think unfortunately, I think we all do that, right? Of some sort. Sometimes even little skulls going on ant mounds, all that stuff.
But it was my grandfather who taught me my love of nature. He's a simple man.
Great.
He didn't even most of you would take a bath in a bathtub or a shower. He would clean up in a wooden tub outside. So he was the one who taught me my love of nature. My grandmother taught me the love of reading.
Did you go fishing and other
I
outdoor?
went fishing, I went hunting, I got in all kinds of trouble. I spent most of my days outside. He had a big yard.
That is so great.
10 dogs, so I loved it.
That's great. So that really must have just instilled your love of nature
That's
to today, right?
Today.
Which is super. So it looks like in Minneapolis, so I have some connections in Minneapolis, and oh my goodness gracious, it is so cold and a lot of snow, right? Growing up in Chicago, it's cold, but not like Minneapolis. Not like Minneapolis.
So like I said, I'd spend you might wonder, well, how did I get in Minneapolis? My father, my adoptive father was from St. Paul. Okay. So after my mom and dad met in Fresno, he married her and said, can you just temporarily come back to Minneapolis? And that was the rest is history. So my job as a kid, well, I had two jobs as a kid in Minnesota, helping to take care of 10 kids and shoveling the sidewalk. That was my job.
Wow. And you were the oldest, right, of the 10 kids, right? So, and
big responsibility.
Yeah, big responsibility. And shoveling snow as well, which is probably all the time up in Minneapolis.
I hate it.
It's a big job.
Right. So I think I have an image of that's what the house is like. We lived in a rental, one of these big it wasn't Victorian, it was plantation style. But the upper duplex is where we lived. I didn't like it. There was pest problems, then we had mouse problems and cockroach problems, and a bunch of kids. By the way, it was mom and dad, and there was probably 8 kids at the time in that house, one bathroom.
Wow.
So it was
tight.
Right. We came from humble roots.
Right. There are a lot of folks that are, big families, small space. I mean, we're today, I know you're probably in a big house and we have all this space, but you forget they can live in a very small footprint with a lot of love and, family.
So we did. And only dad worked. Mom was a housewife. Back in the days, that's what women did.
Right. Probably worked harder than your dad.
Absolutely.
With 10 kids in the house.
10 kids,
oh my goodness.
Wow.
All day long. For me, I have lots of great memories. I have a smaller family, but in my grandparents, all that. My grandmother was in the kitchen all day long. Is that, I'm sure, the way your mom was as well?
Mom wasn't a great cook.
Okay.
So dad was a better cook.
All right.
In fact, I wasn't too bad, and we had no choice. We ate a lot. Dad worked in the bakery, so he could bring back snacks.
Nice.
But mom is a cook, not really. My grandma was a better cook.
Is a better cook.
Yeah.
Great. So there's the photograph. I believe you're the elder, right? In
yes.
That group of
yes.
kids?
I'm wearing that brown shirt in the middle. Yeah. That's and as you can see, we span the color spectrum. we're all mixed with something. So that had profound influence on me, though, because my search image for people, I don't look at what people's color is. I look at what's more here and here.
Right.
As you can see, I got sisters there, blonde hair, blue eyes. What?
I think it's great. So super. And so I think we sort of continue on, right? So you spent, how long did you stay in Minneapolis?
From 6th grade through high school. So
Okay.
I was in Fresno from kindergarten to 5th grade. And then mom and dad sent me back to Minneapolis. I'm not sure, maybe to help babysitting. So this particular image shows I went to, of course, I only went to Catholic school.
Mm-hmm.
This is Ascension, private school.
Mm-hmm.
We had to walk about a mile in the winter.
Ugh.
Ugh. It was
In the snow.
In the snow. And of course, we have to get back to the science thing. I actually won a science fair project for the parish.
Oh, wow.
When I was, I think it was 7th or 8th grade.
That's
Blue ribbon,
great.
first place.
Oh, fantastic.
It wasn't on insects. If I remember, I tried to save that ribbon, but it's hard to save that stuff. But if I remember right, I gave a presentation on the evolution of dinosaurs and humans in one. So
that is super cool.
I did all the research, did all the hand drawing.
Yeah, but those science projects are great, and so it really starts laying those foundations of how to think critically, and as a young kid, 7th grade. I mean, that's fantastic.
So my first public presentations were reading from the Bible and singing in the Catholic choir, but my first non-religious presentation was winning that science.
Wow, congratulations on that. It's fantastic. And so then I think from there you kept on moving. So we're going to move to the next slide. And I believe you made it back out.
High school. So I finished grammar school. I actually won an academic scholarship to De La Salle.
Oh, great.
And this is De La Salle. And people have heard it. De La Salle, it's Christian Brothers Catholic School again.
Yeah.
There's a chain of them.
That's right. There's one here in New Orleans.
Yeah, and then we had one in Minneapolis, and there's one in California. So, and I've actually given talks at the one in Minneapolis and the one in Concord. I've given a presentation. So it was all male. I won an academic scholarship to De La Salle. It's at Minneapolis. It's on an island, on Nicollet Island. I think you see some of those images. The only thing on that island besides De La Salle was a big grain belt sign. So that's, and I was a jock. That's a picture of me playing.
And so what position did you play? I have to ask.
Running back and a defensive back.
All right.
I was a 2-sport athlete. I was also on the track team.
On the track team? Cool.
2 black kids in the senior class of about 400. So
wow.
In the 60s. So during the civil rights era, it was a little bumpy. That typewriter, I took a typing class when I was a freshman in De La Salle on a manual typewriter.
Wait a second. What's a typewriter? I haven't seen one of those in a really long time.
And this,
I'm joking.
This is one of those serendipitous things. So, and I don't not, De La Salle is known for its academic achievements, and I took a computer class there too. But for some reason, I needed an elective, and I just felt compelled to take a typewriting class. And this was freshman. And the beauty of this is then the computer era came along.
Sure. So I was keyboarding. Yeah. That's what I did in high school.
So
which I got a C in, by the way.
The keyboard for the computers was the same as that typewriter. So I was ready.
That's great. No, look, I mean, just little skill sets like that make a big difference, right? So it's great that those foundations are there. So which is wonderful. Cool. All right. And so I have to ask too in track. So what was your thing in track?
I ran the 440 and did the long jump.
Those are great.
And you might wonder, well, even though I won an academic scholarship, why did I do the sports thing? Well, De La Salle is known for sports, but remember, I lived in a rough neighborhood, and I needed a little camouflage to get through the hood, so it helps to be a job.
That's great. So it's good. Look, sports are great for everybody. It teaches teamwork and, just endurance and the works.
And to push yourself.
Yeah. Clearly, I can see from just this, the slides that you've, talked about already is that you already have that drive. And, it's hard sometimes to teach people that drive. I think you can teach it, but a lot of people are just already born with it, right? And I think it's really important, and it's clearly
and it helps. You know, I was the eldest of 10, so I had to learn to be responsible at an early age.
Sure.
Mom and dad both worked, so
right. What do? You have no choice. You have to take care of it, right? So that's great. So I think from there, so you were finished up high school, I believe, right, in Minneapolis?
Yeah, 1969.
1969. And then I think you're back to California.
Right. So what happened there? I mean, there's an image of me. It's my high school yearbook picture, 1969. At the bottom, it said, your ambition was to be a hermit.
I read that. I'm like, what? Somebody made that up. Or was that you?
Me being a smart mouth. I tend to have a smart mouth, but I consider myself kind of shy back then. I was at a school that was predominantly white, conservative. I was mixed, black, and it was hard. So that was my rebellious way. So the other thing I should tell you, I was raised, I went to an exclusive high school, but I lived in the rough neighborhoods of North Minneapolis, and there's an image of a riot of police and riot gear. I was there that night. Wow. I remember. Yeah. So Minneapolis, I just got tired of it. I had to go. I thought there was something better for me. I didn't know what. So the last day of August 1969, I had $300 in my wallet, had one suitcase, a one-way ticket to San Francisco. I just left Minneapolis for good.
Great. Yeah, and started your all career in college, and you know, so many wonderful opportunities as well.
Didn't have much of a game plan, but
look, I mean, sometimes that's what people do. I mean, you're just, it's not where you want to be, and you just jump off that cliff, and you're going to land on your 2 feet, and how you're going to get there, you're going to figure it out, and people do that, right? Yep. And I think that is a personality trait as well, that you're just inherently able to make things happen. And
I was 18 years old too.
Right. I mean, that's young, and very brave, I would say, to do that. So we're going to talk a little bit more about your family. I thought this was so interesting. A lot of history with the Tuskegee princess, right? Can you tell me a little bit about her?
The only reason why I was able how was I able to go to California? I had Aunt Ethel. Ethel Simpson was her name. It's my mother's sister, biological sister. And I asked her, hey, I want to leave Minnesota. I want to go to UC Berkeley. I don't know how to do it yet, but can I stay with you? She said yes. So what I didn't know at the time, she was the Tuskegee princess. Anybody go, well, what does that mean? She married a Tuskegee airman, Henry Simpson. Now, their marriage didn't last long. I only met him once. But she was the one who opened up her door to me. Now her door in that case, she lived in West Oakland. What was that? 15, it wasn't F Street, it was Castro, 1520 Castro. It's on the 3rd floor. She had a 1-bedroom apartment. I slept on a couch for 2 years. And I have to thank Uncle Babe for me. I couldn't get into Cal. Actually, when I was at De La Salle, the advisors said I was too dumb to go to a university. Shouldn't have not told me that. I saw it. This was, I have to be candid here. This was a white conservative male that said I wasn't smart enough to go to college. Bad thing to say to a young black male in the mid-60s. So I asked him, what was the best university in the land? He said Berkeley. I don't think I could have found it on a map. But I knew I had an aunt in Oakland.
Cool.
And she let me stay in her apartment 2 years. And she's an incredible woman. She should have been a pro bowler, but because of the discrimination, I wouldn't let her in. But she and Babe kind of watched over me.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I was blessed. And Babe was the one who told me to go to Laney. I didn't know what Laney was. He said, go to a community college, you can transfer over, it's cheaper. And that's the formula for me.
It's wonderful that you had all the support, family support to get you from step to step, right?
And these were black people, that were helping me. So from about when I was born till I was actually 21, my support mechanism were black folk, educated, caring, loving black folk.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. Let me just tell you, I'm going to tell you one thing. So when I was in high school, my advisor, like the high school advisor, I went to Purdue University.
Oh.
And, and you know what they told me to?
What?
Oh, you're not going to get in to Purdue. Well, okay, well, let me tell you, I got in and I have my PhD now. Okay. So, you know, it's ridiculous. It's just outrageous. But, you know, those things stick with you.
That's right.
All your life. You know,
That's
and
right.
you're like, all right, you know what? You said no, I'm going to prove you wrong.
Right.
I'm
So
going to do it.
when things get hard, and they always get hard,
sure,
and you want to give up or fail, then you think back, this guy said I couldn't do
That's
it.
right.
No.
So, and clearly, I mean, I think it's so important in your story here is that you believing in yourself, right? Being able to overcome all these really just incredible challenges, you know, to really succeed. So I have to tell you, there's 2 photographs on here. I love your aunt on the airplane, right? With the gear. And then I'm gonna just venture to say that she's probably a pretty good cook. I love the picture of bowling. Yeah. She just has that look of like her food's good.
I make a pretty good pot of gumbo.
Yeah.
You know who I learned it from?
Oh, that's great. So are they originally from California? Because I know you have relatives here in Louisiana.
Right. So Ethel was actually born in Fresno.
Okay.
So in Fresno. But on the biological side, and I've done the roots thing.
Right.
I actually have my father was originally from Louisiana, actually a place called Wells, which when I'm done here, tomorrow I go to Lake Charles to see 3 aunties.
Yeah, that's so great. Well, good. We love the Louisiana connection.
I have.
All right, so I think we're gonna go to the next picture set, right? Which is gonna be your
second option. All right, so I couldn't get in the cow, and actually, being a guy, and I'm a guy, so maybe I should have had a better game plan. So I get to Ethel's place. She said I can sleep on the couch, but you got to do something. So I couldn't get in the cow. Cow said, no, you missed the deadline date. You have to try again next year. So Babe took me over to Laney College in Oakland. I signed up there, and they took me. So there's a lot going on at Laney. I was a bio major. Actually, the game plan at Laney when I went there, first it was cheap. I didn't have to pay tuition. You had fees, but no tuition. I was a bio major because I wanted to transfer over to Cal.
Right.
But I was still interested in biology. So I have to thank Clyde Wilson, who ran the biology program at Laney. And there's a picture of me, and I think you can see under the yellow. I was a wild looking. That's one of the desert ecology classes. So I excelled in biology at Laney. I won an award. They had the Black Scientist Award that I won at Laney. And while I was at Laney, the other thing that happened, I was able to get into a summer bridge program in the Cal.
Wow.
So my first year at Cal was actually 1971, working at the Berkeley. Well, actually, it was the Lawrence Radiation Lab in Berkeley. And I ran electron microscopes. I think you see the image there.
That's really great.
And Robert Glazer was my first mentor at Cal. And one of the postdocs in his lab got a Nobel Prize. So this is my first year of the Cal immersion. So
what an opportunity.
From 1 to about 20, black folk raised me. Now Cal gets me, and it's a whole new world. And I was pushed.
It's good, right? Yeah. It's good to be pushed, I think, in that way. Okay, I think we've got another photograph here. Move on the next one. So there's your bridge, and now you're in, right?
Yeah, now I'm in. So my first year as a student, I transferred from Laney to Cal, 1972.
So you were at community college for a year or half a year?
2 years.
2 years. Okay, great.
Then transferred over to Cal. So I lived in the dorms.
Yeah.
I lived in Unit 3, Priestley Hall. An incredible experience. Now I really get the full-blown thing of diversity because in Minnesota, you're either black or white, but at Berkeley, in the dorms, there's Asians, there's people from China, Russia, Africa, whatever. So
everywhere.
I think there's a picture of me as an undergrad with the big afro. But, I had much longer hair. And I was in the College of Natural Resources. And I think it shows the Essig Museum there.
Yeah.
I'm going to hold this up here.
Sure. What is this?
Okay, these are itty bitty teeny tiny insects. These are the first insects that I pinned in 1973 at Cal when I was
Holy
working
cow.
in the Essex Museum. So they hired young undergrads at Cal to work in the Essex because you have to pin these tiny things.
Sure. I'm going to tell you, I don't even know what they are because I don't have my glasses
They're parasitic
anymore.
moths, so you can barely see them. But yeah, so that was, I worked in the Essex, and there's another field picture of me. I'm a field biologist.
Yeah.
You know, I love being outside chasing bugs, getting hot and bit and the whole
That's
bit.
great. I'm going to have to tell you that, as an undergraduate, I worked in a herbarium for years. My background actually is plant pathology, plants and all
There you
that.
go.
But I love that smell, right? And I know these types of locations have that smell, right? Yeah, I know. It's terrible. But you walk in and it's like, oh, it smells so good.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just, I think maybe, sometimes smells bring back memories and all of that.
Yes.
So I think, that's what that is. But that's a great experience, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm pretty excited that you brought that with us and still have that with us, which is great. All right. So then I think from there, you were living in the dorms and all that. And then I think we're going to move to the next one. I believe you lived with your brother for a while.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that happened during that era. So I was an undergrad, and then I graduated in 1975. I want to pull up one other thing. Just to remind people that we have speed bumps in life. So when I was an undergrad at Cal, my first year at Cal, I got on academic probation. And I saved this, and people said, why do you want to save that bad memory? Well, life is like a quilt. You have good pieces and bad pieces, but it makes you. So whenever I need to be inspired to do better, I'll look at this and go, it's okay to fail as long as you get up and keep trying.
Right.
So I graduated from Cal, and in between going to, I'll talk later about the grad school, but I had the opportunity to live with my two younger brothers as adults. Now we lived with each other as kids, but and I brought my brothers out to California. They wanted to change, so we lived in Oakland in a place we called the Crib. The Crib was an amazing place. I remember I took years later, I took a class at Cal, and it made me do an environmental autobiography.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I did this in 1979. And the way this thing works is you have to draw and write down the places that you live that help make you. So I saved this.
This is so interesting.
And this is from that era. The other thing I should mention, in addition to living with, you can imagine living with three young black males. It was just insane. But the other thing I want to mention in there is medical school. I've always loved entomology, but the deal at major universities, particularly if you're a young black male, if you know anything about science, you should be a medical doctor. If you're good with numbers, you should be an engineer. And if you can run your mouth, you should be a lawyer. So there was pressure for me to go to medical school. I actually applied to medical school. I actually got in. Here's my sentence.
Congratulations! Yeah.
And actually, I got into I got into med center in San Francisco.
Wow.
I didn't go to medical school because I had to make a critical decision in life. And if I my heart was in entomology, and I was in love with my wife, soon to be wife, so I didn't want to leave. So
well, I think the entomological world thanks you, right, for not leaving. You have made so many wonderful contributions to our world, right? Which is great. But I think, it's also important for people to know that I'm sure we're going to have students and all kinds of folks, watching this webinar later. But if your heart is into medical school, that's awesome. Do it. But, it's not a failure not to go to medical school and go down your PhD route and get your doctorate. And there's so much to do in this world. And it can be very fulfilling, as it is for you and me and many other people as well.
What I tell students sometimes, oftentimes kids think that you only have one shot at an opportunity. Right. That's not true. If you're good, you'll find out when you reflect back on your career, you'll have multiple shots to express your talent.
That's right.
It's just up to you to decide how you want to do it.
Yeah, I think that's great. So I think you had quite a few. Well, I think for everybody, right? As we go through school and as you move through your career, there's some folks that have been academically, very influential, right?
Correct.
So I know you've got folks, I've got folks as well, and maybe you could talk a little bit about those.
Remember from when I was 1 to about 20, it's mostly Black family. They were my mentors and didn't care.
Yeah.
Once I got into Cal, it was a whole new set of folks. And this image here shows these are the 4 men that got me through grad school.
Yeah.
John Anderson, Dave Wood, John Cassidy, Gordon Frankie. Without these men, I wouldn't have made it through grad school. They believed in me. I'm not quite sure what they saw in me, but they saw something special.
So great.
And I know they look like white males, but it turns out John Anderson was actually, his mother was Native American. So you just never know. What I tell undergrads, I don't know who's going to walk through my door next. So I always have a smile on my face. Hey, how you doing? Because that could be someone who will save your life or open the door of opportunity.
That's really great.
So I'm thankful for them.
Do you still, these gentlemen, I think, are all still alive today?
Of those 4, 3 of them are. John Cassidy left this world, and he was a Wolf Award winner. And by the way, for those who don't know what a Wolf Award is, Nobel Prize is the #1 thing, and then next is the Wolf equivalent for agriculture. So he helped write a letter to get me into grad school, and he was a dear friend for life.
Yeah, so you still maintain contact with them. It's always great, right? It's wonderful.
Tremendous.
To see that. That's cool. Very good. And so what did you work on for your master's degree? So did you did you do a master's and then do a PhD, or did you do the sort of flex master's roll right into a PhD?
So I'm a dinosaur. So back in the olden days, the way entomology worked, and I took, I haven't looked at my transcripts in a while. At least 30 entomology courses. We had a department of entomology. So, and you were in plant.
I was in plant pathology, right?
So you know how that works. So you have to be kind of certified. So you take a bunch of bug classes, then you take an oral test to be certified in entomology. I got my BS. Right. And then the next thing is you should go to grad school. So in entomology back in the day, they still you got to prove it. So you got to do your master's first, and then your PhD. And we have a different model today. So my master's thesis was on a cockroach. It's a brown-banded cockroach, and I looked at their aggressive behavior. So I was in Med Ed. That was my master's. So I actually almost ended up working on mosquitoes. I thought about working with the Hooper Foundation in San Francisco on malaria. I thought about it, PhD, MD, but I'm not sure why I changed my mind. But so I was in Med Ed for a while. The cockroach thesis. In fact, these theses now are in rare book collection. They're so old. Even I have to. I gave
have you looked at them?
Yeah, I have.
You did? Okay, because a lot of times you close the book and they're gone. They're in a library somewhere.
They're in the rare book collection, and I have to go there and show them ID and wear gloves and go. Am I that old? I gave them to them. No. And then the second one, my PhD. When you finish the master's, they allowed me to go on for a PhD, and this was an outdoor. It was California oakworm. So I have a very broad training
and background. And so that's pretty interesting. So the publications are there, or the theses are there. If somebody wants to go look in the rare collection, right?
You got to show your ID.
And so I think, look, I mean, I don't know one person who's in grad school who doesn't have to try to make some money somehow. So what did you do to try to earn some money?
We all have to have side hustles. That continues today.
Yeah.
So in my case, I was able to get commercial pest control license.
All right. So you started early in the pest.
Yes, I did. So my first commercial license was, I thought it was 1982. So I have a branch 2 and a branch 3 operator's license for state of California. So what does that mean? That means I go out and make a business, make money.
Okay.
I didn't make enough money, but I think there's IPM Systems. I helped create that company. There's a picture of my license down there. I ran the pest control program at San Quentin for 3 years.
Whoa, that's interesting.
And while I was at San Quentin, doing the pest control program, I picked up a firefighter badge. So that's a picture of me. And I'm we have 3 generations of firefighters now in what I call the Ohana family. I was the first one to get a badge, and one of my nieces, and I have a grandniece now who's a firefighter.
Cool.
So I gave my grandniece my fire badge.
Oh, that's really great. Interesting. Oh, interesting background there. So then I think at this point, exciting things started to happen. And for
Yes.
folks that are watching on the line, we have someone special here in the building.
I got married to my, maybe not childhood, but dormhood sweetheart. Lisa, Dr. Florida Lisa Kala. She also has a PhD. We got married. We met in the dorms.
All right.
So we've known each other. We met in, I want to say 1974. There's that song I got my wife staring down me here. She got we met in the dorms. We got married in 1979. That's our picture.
Beautiful picture, right?
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's
We started with
fantastic. So that is great. So welcome. We'll talk to your wife a little bit, I
Yeah.
think, here at the very end of the webinar.
She was
just
an
to
administrator at
introduce.
Cal. You should talk to her. I was faculty. She was an administrator. She was the boss.
All right. So wonderful. All right. So then, okay. So then you graduated. You have your degree,
I had my
right?
PhD.
So
I had my-
wait a second. So I'm going to ask you this question. Did you get married after you finished your PhD or before?
No, we got married before.
So you were already having children and all of that
Yeah.
while you were still doing your
That's
PhD.
right.
That's incredible. Look, that is a feat for anyone because that is
PhD
amazing.
students get married, having family, side
Wow.
hustle. We did all that stuff.
Wow,
Also juggling.
That all the time. That's incredible. And so then you joined academia, right? So now you become
Right,
a professor. And,
Yeah.
and where did you start? That was in
so
1990.
I have to tell you, how do I go from San Quentin to being at a major university? David Wood is the father of my job. He was the chair of our department.
Uh-huh.
He knew I had started businesses. He knew I was running a pest control program at San Quentin. He also knew that I had a PhD. So he was the one who said, come back. So I quit my job at the state without telling my wife. She was mad at me for that. And came back to Cal as a postdoc. I took a pay cut, by the way.
Oh.
But they got me on faculty at Cal in 1990. That image of that office was my office in 418 Wellman Hall. By the way, remember when I told you John Anderson was my first mentor?
Uh-huh.
That was his office.
Oh.
So, when I first walked in that office, I was feeling goosebumps.
Oh, I'm sure.
To be in the office of one of your mentors was
Oh, it's
just
really
unbelievable. I still can't believe I did that.
right. I mean, and really, you probably just had this also thought of like, I have to do amazing, right?
To be amazing.
Right.
The guy
to
who
hold
had
up the
this
man's
office was
legacy.
amazing. So you have to do that. You have to do it.
That's really great. So let me just ask a little bit about the whole pest control portion of it, because I think when you have that on the ground experience, what do you think that brought to your position in academia?
The reason why I got my job, well, first of all, I got the faculty vote. You get faculty jobs. So people ask me, how did you get your job? Well, I got the faculty vote. Well, how did you get the vote? I took all the classes and did well. The other thing that was happening in the 1980s, this whole thing about diversifying faculty, this is not new. These discussions have been going on at Cal for decades. So they brought me in because they thought I had the best chance of fulfilling the diversity hire and also had the talent. I was not only had a PhD, but I had field training. They needed an urban entomologist.
Yeah.
Man, that was me.
Yeah, having that field component is so important.
Huge.
It is absolutely huge. And so I think, for all faculty members, I'll be honest with you. I mean, it's like you're sitting at a desk writing grants all day, it seems like. I mean, there are a lot of, expectations that come along with being a faculty. And can you sort of touch a little bit on that?
Now, and this is for all faculty, but remember, I'm at Cal, the number one public university in the world.
Right.
So, the expectations are through the
Super
roof.
high.
So for me, it was simple. The Berkeley campus, the university, wanted an urban entomologist. Number two, they wanted me to conduct applied research. That was you will go out and do applied research. You will give a lot of talks. You will get money. You will publish.
Right.
So I knew I was eyes wide open, and I kind of went, Ave Maria, yes, I'll do it. So,
Yeah.
and you got
And
5
did it
years
well.
to get tenure.
Oh, 5 years?
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's it.
Totally. And so, of course, publications, they can say, a lot of universities, oh, yes, we need you to do extension and all that good stuff. But if you're not publishing your work, you're going to have problems, right?
I'm sorry. And for any young faculty members out there, I'm telling you, at the end of the day, you got to do the work. Serious.
And so you've got, your CV is a abbreviated CV is posted online, right? Your faculty, and I know that's abbreviated, but you have numerous publications across a lot of different, in entomology, but a lot of different insects that you've been working on.
Yeah.
So maybe you could talk a little bit about some of those early publishing.
Okay. Well, with the courtesy of academia, it's publishing.
Right.
So now remember, my master's was with cockroaches.
That's right. And oakworms, right?
And then oakworms. So obviously, in the early part of my career, I published on those. I had data. I write it up. So those are my earliest publications.
Can I just say one thing on that? And I think it is a great example here that, students that are doing their master's and PhD, please publish that work, right? Because I think it really shows the cycle. You can do all the work and everything, but if you don't close that book, right? I know I ask, like, well, why didn't you publish it, right? So you need to be able to finish. And I think this is a great example.
Finish it. And I don't care where you publish it. Just
get it out there. Get it out there. So that's good. And so you aren't working with termites. I mean, I've been in this industry now for 20 years, which is crazy to sound. I say 20, oh my goodness. But I've only known you with termites, I know. Right? So I'm newer to the industry. And so then I think that's when you started. And I think my cavity, right? Played a very important role.
I'm known for my termite work. So the question is, how do I go from cockroaches and oakworms to termites? So I have to thank Marion Page, was another Black entomologist, just to let folks know that I'm not the only one out there. He was at Cal. He got his master's at Cal. He also worked for the USDA Forest Service. Okay. And he said, I got to introduce you to this incredible researcher named Mike Haverty. And this is when the PSW, Pacific Southwest Research Station, was in Berkeley. So it was Page who introduced me to Haverty. Nice. And Haverty looks at me and he says, hey, you ever heard of doing research on termites? I'm going, huh? So Mike and I took a liking to each other. We've probably co-published 40 or 50 papers together. He was the one who was my father in my career, because he actually told the termite community, hey, this guy is good. You got to listen to him. You got to give him a chance. So I'm indebted to Mike.
That's really great.
It's a dear friend.
And really during that time, a lot of interesting work was being done with termites. I think we can move to the next slide and talk a little bit about some of the work you've done in the past with termites in one of your publications, and also some coworkers and students, right?
Yeah. I'm probably, if you go into Google Scholar, and, type my name, you get a bunch of papers. This one pops up, the evaluation of 6 techniques for controlling Western drywood termite. So drywood termites are very important globally, but particularly in North America, in California. And there was a lot of interest into using non-chemical controls. I mean, people talk about, we got to be green and IPM. And we've had this 30 years ago, we were having the same discussion. Right. I'm sorry. So this paper here was the first attempt to look at non-chemical methods compared to fumigations. I got a lot of money for this, like the better part of $400,000 grant. Right. So remember, I told you, gotta get money, get money. And I built a building. I've heard talk about a little tiny termite. Well, here's a big one, 400 square feet that was built. It was supposed to cost $17,000. It cost me $60,000, but that's another story. There's always cost overrides. And this is just the imagery from some of that era. I had a lot of people. Mike was incredible here to help. He, as a co-PI, counted hundreds of thousands of insects, dissected all kinds of board that we even brought. I have a couple. There's Gail Getty. Have you heard of her? She worked on it. Samia Moen was a visiting scholar from Egypt. So we had Muslim women scientists 30 years ago working on this project, just to show you the power of diversity. Harvey Logan was the executive director for the Pest Control Operation of California. He taught me the ropes of the politics of pest control. You probably had Ed Bordas.
Mr. Ed Bordas has been my mentor, learning the ropes here in Louisiana as well.
So this is going back into the mid-90s. And by the way, I got sued doing this research, a $1.5 million lawsuit. I won the lawsuit, but as you well know, those of us who do impactful work sometimes have to deal with people, thumbs up, they make a lot of money, thumbs down, they sue.
They might not like the answer, right? But I think, the one good thing with these types of positions is really you have to have that integrity, and you just have to say it what the data tells you the answer, right? You just have to design these studies correctly and make sure it's replicable and all that other good stuff, but it's really the data.
Right. And you have to believe in the peer review process.
That's right.
It's very powerful.
I think it's important. So let me continue on, I think, with some more drywood termite. Get the next slides.
Oh yeah. So I picked this one out. This one, drywood termites produce pellets, and oftentimes that's the first sign that you have the problem. So Haverty and I, we got the brainstorm. We do our best brainstorming, probably on a bar next week, followed by a coffee shop. What can we do that's different? So since they make these pellets, maybe there's something diagnostic in those pellets that we can use to tell if an infestation is active or not. So, and Mike is the analytical chemist. He had a much bigger budget than I did. Plus, he had powerful statisticians. And we came up with this way of trying to see if we can quantify the waxes on the outside of drywood termite pellets. And I think I'll
get a next slide as well on that.
Because it kind of shows. All right. So what people don't know, I think most people know insects are covered with waxes. But what they don't know, the pellets are also covered in waxes. And if you quantify that, you get 72 different waxes from a little tiny pellet. So we thought maybe the way you can tell infestations if they're young or old is maybe the peaks disappear. We still had the same number of peaks. And this is James Baldwin, the statistician, figured it. He helped us. He says, look at the area under the curve. That's what's changed. And that was able we were able to age colonies based on the area under the peaks. And we were awarded the original patent for this, by the way.
Wow, that is super interesting.
Unbelievable research.
That's really great.
That's the stuff that I really like. The little kid in me. I get to know something no one else knows.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
Really, really great. And then I think, with the subterranean termites as well, that was an interesting time. And, once I was actually reviewing a lot of your work, like, oh my goodness, they're doing in California what they're doing here in Louisiana. Yeah. There's a lot of parallels, which is really neat, right?
Wow. This was another one. This was, we take it for, as you well know, we know a lot about subterranean termite, how they forage.
Yeah.
But that's based on work from other people. So the reason why I picked this paper, now Mike Haverty was the brainchild that came up with this study in California. But if you remember, he did his PhD in Arizona in the 70s with toilet paper rolls. So he had that in the back of his head. So we just modernized that work for California. And a lot of people look at the forage behavior of subs in the region. But what this one was different is we were able to quantify in urban areas. You have a bunch of little tiny colonies around the house. Now, Mike, Susan Jones, they said they showed that in the deserts. We were the first ones to show this for ticks in North America. That's the importance of this work.
Very important.
Almost 30 years ago, if I remember right.
Yeah, really, really important. And anytime you're doing field work, it is dirty, it is hot, it is heavy, right? A lot of similarities here. Digging those posts. Okay, did you break your wrist or did you hurt yourself? Because I know I've hurt my knee, almost twisted my wrist with those drills.
Yeah, this is a two-man auger. So, if you do this wrong,
it'll take you.
And we drilled hundreds of holes, installed thousands. This was before the base station.
Sure.
Thousands. Urban, wildland areas, there's ticks, there's mosquitoes, there's wild pigs or whatever. It's just, I can't believe we did all that.
But fun, I will say, every
absolutely.
time.
Absolutely.
Very, very good. And at the time, sort of next slide here, really interesting at the time that people were using different kinds of dyes, to quantify mosquitoes. So we can get the next
That's right.
slide. There we go. Oh,
all right.
I said mosquitoes. I meant termites. Sorry.
Oh, they die mosquitoes too. So yeah, of course, this Nanyao Sioux and its pioneer Minoru Tamashiro. I've got to give people credit.
Yeah.
Hawaii. They came up with all the dyes. Of course, we copied some of that. We took it a step farther because we have particular hydrocarbons, organisms. Then we used Ed Vargo's microsatellite. And you can just, and then you have $100,000 piece of equipment. And people wonder, well, how can you do all this high power research? Because we have high power budgets and a lot of people working on it. So,
yep. So yeah, it's interesting. A lot of it, and again, this is kind of, I started in this industry, the termite industry, just after I think, maybe 10 years after you guys had started this kind of work. And it was really, I thought was impactful with all of this work as well, is that it's truly providing that understanding of what is happening in the ground, because your pest control professional, they're going around checking stations, but they don't know, is this colony A or colony B or, what is going on?
yeah.
And the work that you've done, of course, others with Nanyao and here in New Orleans at Armstrong Park is Gilgetty, all of those sites is just to sort of pull that veil back and say, wow, this is really a dynamic situation in the ground and what is happening. So it's provided a lot of understanding.
And we had a healthy relationship with, and we're exchanging information with, some people say, well, there's a lot of competition between labs, maybe for some disciplines. Termite people got along.
Yeah.
We exchanged ideas.
A lot of conversation, which I think is great. And so I think one of the studies, a very important study here. And when I first started talking to you, I was like, that church. And you're like, oh, here it is. So it was great to talk about that.
What the earliest subterranean research in North America was foremost in termites, and they're big as a football field, eating a whole country block. So the question is that the same across the country? No, it depends upon where you're at and what species you're dealing with. And a lot of the lay people think termites eat 24/7. Well, no. I mean, you don't eat 24/7. There's some seasonality in there. And then you think, well, I only have one colony under my house, and you might have 3, 4, or 5. And by the way, they move.
They move, right?
These colonies move. I'm not talking hours. I mean, over several weeks, the colony may move. So. And that's the significance of this research.
Yeah, no, I think it's really super important. It looks like you then started getting into bed bugs a little bit, right? Tell us a little bit about your bed bug scenario. It looks like you have is that your research house that you had in the back?
Yeah. So the villa was originally built to test drywood termite detection and control methods. But since we have the house built, might as well put other stuff. So what people don't realize is the villa has been used not only for drywood termites, but for subterranean termites, dampwood termites, woodborne beetles, bed bugs, cockroaches, ants. Did I miss any? So it's and people say, well, why a house? It gives realism.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I could have done it all in a test tube in a petri dish, and you go, well, but when I do it in something the size of a 2-car garage, 400 square feet, chances are if it doesn't work there, it's not going to work in your house.
No, I think this is great. In these sort of test houses, there's a lot of folks now that have these test houses. So this is really,
but this was the first one.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It was like groundbreaking, to have these. And so how did you get the bed bugs into this building? Because doing a release is not easy.
Yeah, so let me tell you. So then we had that resurgence of bed bugs across North America.
That's right.
So what happened? You don't hire new bed bug science. You would take your urban entomologists, who's normally termite people, and refurbish them or retool them to become bed bug researchers. So that's what happened here. The state said, can you get involved with the bed bug problem? And we were testing monitors. And again, I don't believe in test tubes and petri dishes. So we put thousands of live bed bugs in that building. The cops who were at the field station didn't like that. They wanted warning signs.
Wow.
They didn't want to go in there. They're afraid they're going to get eaten alive. It was just an incredible experience. I also got a second provisional patent for a bed bug bait. And there are no, to be clear with that, there are no commercial bed bug baits yet. Don't start calling on it. But 10 years ago, I thought of an idea on how to do it. So maybe someday before I die, they'll commercialize something else.
So I know you're a fumigation expert. You're
Yes, I
working
am.
with drywall
Douglas, yes,
termites. And
yes,
so
I
did you
do.
end up fumigating that building?
Yes.
Is that what you guys would do?
The only reason why I was able to put live bed, I had to promise the dean I'd fumigate it.
Okay.
It was fumigated. There are no live bed bugs in there. Oh,
So I know something, that goes along with academia and research. You're always cooperating and talking with a lot of different folks, but it's all about, a lot of travel. And, we go to conferences and you meet other folks and exchange ideas. And can you talk a little bit about, you're already very well recognized. I mean, I just talked about one award, but you're recognized worldwide, right? It's an international. But can you talk a little bit about some of the projects that you've done internationally?
Probably the most fun. Well, I've been to over 40 countries.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's awesome.
Been on all continents. Termites are on all continents except the Antarctic.
Uh-huh.
They're probably there in fossils. We haven't found them yet. So there was a time where the United Nations, there was, if you go back several decades, there was the big move to try and stop the use of chlorinated hydrocarbons.
Yeah.
You might remember.
For termite, right? Well, for a lot of reasons.
They wanted to stop it
well.
for mosquitoes.
Mm-hmm.
I think they pretty much reduced that now. But
Yeah.
what people don't realize, the second most use of chlorinated hydrocarbons was on termites globally. So the UN was hot on that and was then called, the Stockholm Convention. And the UN, you might wonder, well, how do I get involved with the UN? One of their administrators was a Cal grad. So here we go again. When you're a freshman, you get to know your friends, that might be for life. So Peter Kenmore was one of the directors of FAO in Rome. And he asked me to put together the termite dream team. There it is. So 20 experts from around the world. I'm in there, Nanya, Sue, Haverty, Barbara Thorne. And I spent about 10 years troubleshooting termite problems around. It was just an incredible experience. Just incredible.
Sure. And I know you've traveled a lot around the world, and you can see the next slide here. You've got some amazing termite mounds. And
yeah, that's me and Mike and Darwin. Okay, so you can find termite mounds in different parts of the world. Right. So here's the deal. The tallest termite mounds are supposed to be in Darwin, Australia, near Kakadu. It's an indigenous land. This particular one, I don't know, this might be 17.
I was going to say it's between 17 and 20 feet at least, right? I mean,
that
is tall.
What we were looking for, we were told there's a 30-footer there. We never found it, maybe because there's too many crocs and snakes biting flies. But that was an amazing experience.
Incredible.
And by the way, people ask me, what's they're filled with what? And I go, it's grass. They just cut grass and throw it in there and turn it into fungal gardens.
Incredible. Really incredible. And so I know you were in Japan in 2011 for their earthquake, tsunami.
Yeah, I was there. I was on sabbatic when all that. It was one of the more incredible tragedies. I had a front row seat. I was there when all that went down. Actually, I was ordered back when Fukushima went off. The university wanted me back. The chancellor, my wife, wanted me back. I stayed. I couldn't leave my friends. Yeah. They were just devastated. So I stayed extra to help out where I could. I actually volunteered to go on the relief efforts, and thank God Gilroy University said you're too valuable to put you in that type of danger. But it was a very humbling experience for me. And this one of these images was, I actually went back later that year. They had a fly invasion, and I was there with Chow Yang and Brian Porschler and Moshe Bar, and we inspected an area in the Fukushima region after the earthquake. So it was.
I've talked to Dr. Porschler about his experience.
Yeah, it was intense. They warned us that before we go in there, we would probably have nightmares. I had two nightmares. So it was unbelievable.
I think when we've worked through Hurricane Katrina here. Yeah. And, I was fortunate, and then I didn't lose any person, family member, or, even my house. Everything is all good. But, once you live through a recovery process like that,
Yeah.
that stays with you forever.
Yeah.
And I think we mentioned this a little bit, and I'm sure this happens with you, is that people are going to want you to talk about that experience, and you go an extended period of time without talking about it. And all of a sudden someone's like, well, can you talk about hurricane, mosquito, or vector control? And then you start to look at these photographs,
Yeah.
and all these memories, come back of those experiences. So
I had to give a tape memorial. One of my Japanese colleagues died. And in fact, it just aired earlier this week. Excuse me. And it was hard because, I had to bring back images and mention our life together during this period. It was difficult.
It's difficult. It does, I think, harden you in some ways for, the next disaster that comes through. And, you do learn a lot from recovery and emergency management, because clearly you guys were working on all kinds of vector control emergency management issues.
And we had to work there alongside, shoulder to shoulder with search and rescue. So when we pulled up something and looked underneath, we never knew what we were going to see.
You never knew what it was going to be. Right. All right. So I think, there's also, we're going to go to the next slide. And, talking about sort of sense of belonging, right? So you've mentioned already in this, webinar, in some cases, you were the minority, if it was Caltech or wherever it may be.
Right. Yeah, most of my career, certainly through grammar school and high school, and actually through most of my collegiate training, I was the only minority in the bug classes. Yeah. So people ask me, well, how did I make it through? Well, when I was an undergrad in my early years at Cal, I was blessed to be surrounded by a support group of other young Black males from the HBCUs, Ken Grace's and Ken Boutet's in there, myself, Jerry. We've known each other for decades, and we maintain those friendships.
Yeah, and actually, Dr. Boutet is here, and so when question and answer, we're going to bring you in here, Dr. Boutet. And as it turns out, he is one of our board members as well, co-chair for many, many years.
Yep.
So
that helped get me through. Yeah. And we've had some interesting times as undergrads. People ask me, have times gotten better now than when they were in the day? Yes. Do they need to get better? Yes, and we'll keep going, but we survived it. I like to think I'm in one piece, and and I have my sanity. I haven't lost my soul. Some people think you have to sell your soul to the devil. I sold my soul to the devil. No. And then, of course, I was blessed to have an incredible role model in Dr. Margaret Collins. She was a termite lady, so I actually met her. She's been dead 20 years. But I've actually met her, so I had someone to look up to in the termite world.
That's exciting. And so I think, the role as you sort of move on into your career, it's really all about giving back, right? I know for me, so many people have been so generous with their time as, every step of the way to push me along and open up doors. And I think that's one of the most rewarding aspects of our types of positions. And so I know do you know how many students you've had over the years?
No.
Yeah, probably a ton, right? So
I call them my lab children. In fact, I was just at one.
Slide.
One of my lab children just got a PhD from Santa Cruz in education. We just celebrated that Saturday last week.
Oh, great.
So it continues.
So if we can go to the next slide, we're going to show a little bit some of your students, and there's a story that is just super exciting that we're going to finish the slide on with the 4-year-old.
Yeah, so these the images of my lab. Now, remember, I was a PI in the lab and I got money. So I got to hire my staff. I got to pick them, I got to hire.
That's great.
You saw those pictures of me as a child with all that diversity. You can see it in my lab.
Yeah, it's great.
People ask me, well, what's the common thread here? Hey, they're all talented. I don't care what you look like. And they're all talented. They're all excellent. Men, women, people in wheelchairs. I don't care. Just show me some
hard work, right?
We've had, Robin Tabucci was my lab manager. She had 3 kids. She had to pump the breast milk. We've been on.
Do what you got to do to get the job done.
Get the job done. And then we got to get back to kids. So I normally see kids at scale about once a year, even to this day. I like to go out. I just love talking
It's
to kids.
fun, right? They're so
Fun.
interested and they have great
I get to
questions.
bring the bugs. And I
It's
mean,
really
what's
good.
DNA look like to a kid? But you bring a cockroach or butterfly, they get it. So,
Totally. And so there's a great example here of a young person, right, that ended up getting a PhD. I think this was in the newspaper.
Yeah, this just came out a couple of weeks ago. So a young lady, it started actually about 6 months ago, a young lady who's a prof at UC Santa Barbara was looking for a prof at Cal who inspired her at 4. So it went around and around. I didn't think it was me. We thought it was someone else. And finally, it turned out it was me. And you might find, well, how did you know it was me? Something that happened 30 years ago. Well, she mentioned a live scorpion and a live hissing cockroach. And that was the only lab that had that stuff.
That's so cool.
So, she was a prof. I haven't met her. Well, I met her when she was 4. I kind of felt bad doing the interview because, do you remember her? No, I don't remember.
Look, I am sure you're going to meet her. Like, I have no doubt about it. So that is super awesome. You know, and again, I mean, it just shows that, like, how incredibly impactful, right? For all these years, for this kid to be following through.
Yeah, that was amazing.
You know, to remember. So
it started on Twitter, and it went to the dean's office, the department office, and it finally ended up in the newspaper.
I just think that's a cool story.
Yeah.
I have to tell you. So that's good. And like with all that we do, and I know that you're not a 9-to-5 kind of worker. So it's a from morning probably to never ends kind of deal. Like the pile never ends, right? So you're like, oh, I think I'm getting under the pile. Oh, wait a second. Let me move the next one over. So there's always a family right behind. And you know, in your case, you had a high power, you know, wife behind you, probably pushing a little bit as well. But can you talk a little bit about your family?
Well, I mean, to me, family is important. So this is me. My daughter's in the middle. My wife Lisa, and my grandson Tahir, and of course we're big Warrior fans. Go Warriors! So I think that's from 2017 with one of the playoff. So, but their family to me is important. They always has to.
Right.
It's the eldest of 10.
That's right.
I don't have 10 kids because
That's a lot of kids. Yeah. No explanation needed. No explanation needed. That's a lot of kids. But and then you have the most enormous extended family.
Well, that comes from Lisa's side. This is the Ohana families in Hawaii. By the way, Lisa's Filipino Hawaiian. You should talk to her later about that. In the Philippines, this group would be bigger. So we have a huge extended family, and we've been, and I have a big one too. I mean, I have here, I'm in Minnesota and California. So maybe that's why I get texts and phone calls. Uncle, can you help me? I don't know what to do. What's this thing? Who do I call? But you got to give back.
No, absolutely. I think that is just super great. And so I think, for the folks that are on the line, look, it is easy to find you. All right.
Yeah.
So if you want to know more information here, do a search, like Google your name. It's like, comes up. There's tons of things, interesting extension and projects and newspapers and all of that. And I'm glad you mentioned Google Scholar. Actually, that's it's a really great, because a lot of times at universities, you have to be a student or faculty to get into the library system. Of course, you can always go to their libraries, but not everybody has access. No. So Google Scholar, I think, is great in that it's not complete, but it's going to give you a lot of publications that are in there. And it's free, right? So it's free. You can go on there and look. And then, even Ancestry.com. I mean, this isn't an endorsement. We're not, anything, but there's a lot of information there as well. Especially on families if you're into genealogy, and I think you are.
Right, and they have this incredible newspaper database, and I've typed my name in there once, and oh God, it was just scary. There's all kinds of newspapers.
It's incredible, right, what some of these sites can pull up from the past. So I do want to introduce Dr. Lisa, your wife. She is here, so I'm going to have her come over here into the view. I know she's been your backbone, so we appreciate it so much for coming over. And then we're going to introduce Dr. Ken Boutte as well. And thank you so much, right? I appreciate it so much, right? And I don't, wanted to say thank you as well for coming in. I know it's probably been a super interesting, we've been talking about bugs, right, the whole time. But tell us a little bit about what you do.
So actually, I'm retired.
Okay.
And like he said, we met as undergraduates.
Uh-huh.
I was entomophobic. I am a city girl.
That often happens with our family members, but we have a way of overcoming that phobia.
Yes. Well, the way I explained it is love is deaf, dumb, and blind. And so I overcame it because he was studying cockroaches. Yeah. And when he went away to give conference presentations, somebody had to water and feed his cockroaches. And so I overcame my entomophobia pretty quickly. Yeah. And so I learned the hard way, and I'm in education.
Oh,
so
great.
My doctorate has been in education, and Vernard and I were both very, very fortunate to be able to continue to work at Berkeley.
Oh, that's so great.
And so I just recently retired as well.
Great.
And of course, I'm on recall. And helping out part-time, but I get to spend more time traveling with him now.
Oh, I know, that's so great. So I don't know what trips you guys, I know with COVID it's been horrible, and I'm sorry everybody's been so sick, but one of the things is that in our industry we just haven't been able to travel, right?
Exactly.
And so I think people are just now getting back into it. So do you guys have any good trips coming up?
We do. We just got back from a tour of the Southwest National Parks.
Oh,
beautiful, beautiful.
Great.
And then in February, in October, we're going to go to Hawaii.
Oh, great.
And then to see family. And then in February, we're going to Egypt.
That is on my bucket list. I haven't been there yet, so that's fantastic. That's wonderful. Mm-hmm. Well, good. I appreciate so much. I think, such an important part of the story, obviously, and taking a few minutes to talking with me a little bit. And I'm going to introduce our board member, Dr. Ken Boutte, as well. College friends. And Dr. Boutte, I am not going to ask you any stories, from that time. We'll keep it strictly professional.
Let me tell you, they were great on the football team.
Oh, I am sure. Now I want to know what position he played as well. So Dr. Boutte is here. Fortunately, again, very fortunate in my role here to have lots of interactions with you. And, I know, and again, we're not going to talk about the college years. Okay. So I don't want to imagine. Okay.
The college years were great. It's your formative year. It's when you don't realize what you're going to do for a career. You just know you want to do something. And when you're in college, this is when you start getting experiences, you start getting advice, and then you begin to realize, what you want to do in life.
Right.
As Vernard said, for many students, you're kind of pushed into thinking about medical school.
Right.
And when I tell my students I didn't go to medical school, it's like, well, wait a minute, that's the Holy Grail. Why didn't you grasp that? And you have to find out what it is you like and what it is you love.
Right.
And there's a difference between having a job and having a career.
That's right.
You like what you do when you have a career. People ask me, why aren't you retired? I've been at Xavier University now for 37 years, but I like what I do.
Yeah.
And although, Vernard talks about some of the research and things, I did my research thing, but most of what I focused on was the advising of students, being able to guide them, being able to motivate students. Because I remember that's what kept me in the loop, kept me going on. When I finished undergrad and I did some research in parasitology, I decided, well, that's what I wanted to do. And where could I do it in graduate school? And at the time, we didn't have the internet. You had to look at Peterson's guide and things of that nature to determine the best schools. But it said that the top school in my area for life sciences was Berkeley. And I knew no one in California. The nearest relative I had there was in Los Angeles. But I decided, hey, this is what I want to do. And, went into a culture shock the first week I was there. But it wasn't until meeting people like Vernard and some of the other students that were there when we realized we had this common bond. And we all had the same type of mentality, I can do, I will do, I must do. And so we bonded together and we were able to help each other through qualifying exams. I think the mock qualifying exams we had were worse than the actual exams in graduate school. But it made us who we were. And we realized that if there are these opportunities that are there, and all you need is, not a handout, but just to have the door crack open and allow you to go in be able to show what you can do and show that you're qualified. It's not that, well, if you're a minority, you're part of a special program, or no, we got in because we took the tests, we took the GRE tests, and we had the grades, and we were able to perform. And it's just giving us an opportunity to be able to do this, and that's what set it apart. And I met Vernard, gosh, 35 years ago, for over 40 years now. It was 76, I guess. And yet we still have ties with many of the other students that were there at Berkeley, and we still come together. We'll get together for fishing trips and things of that nature. And it's always been good, where we can always relate with each other. You saw our little football team. That was, and that was when we lost in the playoffs. We made it to the playoffs. Should have won. But people were like, here are these guys, they're in graduate school and they're playing football. Yeah, we could play football and we could hang together. And I was on a knee on that picture because I had blown out a knee. But those types of things happen. But it was that camaraderie. It was that idea that we could come together. And it was the realization that you had people that recognized your potential, that believed in you, and that said you can do it. And in my mind, it's like, well, if they can pass it on to me, I can pass it on to other people and be able to let them know, yes, you can.
I think just that attitude and just like in helping, a lot of times people think they can do it, but they need to know they can do it. And sometimes it's just, I know your position at Xavier, you have such an opportunity to, really tell people that instead of saying, you can't get in, I don't think you're going to get in, right? Or you can't do it. That's terrible for these advisors, to say that. Right.
Find a way.
And so, I think it's wonderful even today at Xavier that you have that opportunity. I don't think we told the audience exactly what you do at Xavier. I didn't want to give them your role today.
Oh, that's okay. I'm professor of biology at Xavier University. I started out at Xavier in 1985 in the biology department. And after about 10 years or so, I guess, I became chair of the department. Then I was asked to go into the dean's office.
Now you're
and I had to really think about that. But I thought that I could have some influence more than just being a chair. You could have more influence on the kids in the entire university. And so I did that. And I ended up spending 17 years in some capacity in the dean's office. And then I decided I'd like to get back into the classroom. I'd like to be but I'd like to do the advising. And I've always had, at least 40 students at one time where you can advise them, not just with the curriculum, but with the career. And it's amazing the things that have happened. I just got an email yesterday from a former student. I had started a program for students that wanted to go to graduate school. Med school kids were the upper echelon. And if you wanted to go to graduate school, then you were the second-class citizens. And I said, that shouldn't be that way. We're going to have a program. And the William Penn Foundation had some monies, and they said they were willing to fund it if I would write a proposal and get it funded. So I got it funded. And I started what was called the Ernest E. Just Pregraduate Scholars Program, which will allow students as freshmen to do research. and become involved with research and be able to understand what graduate
Right.
school is all
That's
about.
so great.
Well, this young lady was in my program, and she finished her master's, and she got married and had kids and so forth. But she always wanted to get her PhD.
Mm-hmm.
And she sent me an email yesterday saying, guess what? I just completed my dissertation at UNO. I am now doctor, PhD. And I remember how you taught me and how you
See how
encouraged me.
exciting that
I don't
is?
remember that, but I hope it's true. But yes, trying to advise the students and
That's so
trying to
great.
encourage them. And that's where I find satisfaction, when you find the students that come back and they tell you that, you
Made
did
some sort of
something to me.
impact,
Now,
right?
while you're in the classroom, it's us versus them. But after they realize, he wasn't out to get me. He was actually out to help me
That's how.
and be able to give me the training and the experiences
That's really great. So for the folks on the line, actually, you're on my list. We talked about this at our last board meeting, but we're going to be doing one of these with you as well, okay? Because I think
well,
it's
I can't tell you no, but
which I think is great. And I think, Stacy, do we have anyone that has questions on the line? I believe we do. So I think this could be for the group. But
hour here.
oh, either way, but Dr. Boutte, thank you so much for coming over. And
And
it was funny, just as a little side story, I had talked to Dr. Lewis here, was it earlier in the year, and for Mardi Gras. And he almost did not tell me that he was coming into town, okay, to come visit you. And I said, what?
Well, he
You
knows
cannot come
if he
into town
comes to
and
New
not tell me.
Orleans, he has a place to stay. He has something to eat. He's got the key to my house,
That's
so
right,
he can just
You can go grab
come
him off of
anytime he
Bourbon
wants.
Street,
My
something like that.
grandkids, my youngest grandchild, Chad, he wants to be a scientist. And I don't know if he's going to go into entomology. He's thinking of marine biology. But Chad just adores Bernard.
That's so great.
In fact, when Vernard came in for Mardi Gras, and Chad was staying with me, and he was talking to Vernard. He said, "Well, I've got these Madagascar hissing cockroaches. Now, what other 9-year-old has Madagascar hissing cockroaches?" So, unfortunately, my daughter allows him to have these things.
Sure.
And Vernard said, "Yeah, I have some too." And they started sharing stories and doing their things there. So yeah, and that's how you pass it on.
Well, I think it's exciting. You can stay here. I think it's so exciting that you guys have been friends for all these years. And still, that friendship, it's lifelong, right? Continues. And so, which I think is great. So I believe we do have a couple of questions I see in the chat. Astasia, would you mind reading off those questions for us? And we'll see, how they can get them answered.
I don't see any questions in the chat.
Oh, okay. All right, good.
However, I do have a question myself.
Sure.
Dr. Lewis mentioned that he was a diversity hire at Berkeley when he got hired on as faculty. I just wanted to know, did he feel a lot of pressure to perform when he got hired? And how did that experience kind of, how did that work out for him? Trying to get tenure in 5 years, being a minority, was the pressure really high?
Yes. Yeah, I was, I thought in the image I had, I was a Chancellor Minority Fellowships awardee. So that was Chancellor Heyman, if I remember rightly. He created that program. And the way it works, for those of you who don't know, they find promising young minority, sometimes women, students in the PhD program that look like they're on a superstar or have potential, and they tell faculty, "We'll pay for them if you give them a chance in your unit." And I was one of I guess I was the first one in my college. So yeah, so there's a bit of a pioneer to it. Yeah, and it's going to be that way. It was that way 30 years ago. I'm sorry, it's that way today. Same thing. You got to do the work under pressure. Got to be like Steph and get them points with a triple team on you. I'm sorry. For women too, I mean, we still, are we 50-50 on faculty hires in America? Nope. For women, nope. But you can do it. And not sell your soul. I did it. My wife did it. She was an administrator. It can be done. They're good careers. You get a lot of money.
When did that start?
Great. Well, look, I can't thank all three of you enough for coming in, making this really, I think, just an incredible webinar for everyone and sharing your lives, right, to everyone. And it's important, I think, for people to understand the background and not just the papers, right? I mean, you have to understand the papers, but who's doing the work? So thank you again for being part of our series. And Dr. Boutte, we've got one scheduled for next year. We'll get yours on the calendar, okay? So I think that's going to be a really great one as well. But everyone, thank you again for taking the time to spend with us this morning still. And please make sure you check our social media feed. We're at NOLA Mosquito. We do have another one with actually my advisor. Dr. Don Dixon is coming up later in the month. And then we have Dr. Austin Frischman. And then we have Mr. Vincent Palumbo coming up from our region. So again, thank you, everybody. If you'd like to be on our email list, please email us at education@nola.gov, and we'll make sure to get you on our email list so you're getting notified about these webinars. Thanks again. Thanks for spending your time. Thanks.
Thank you. Wow.